discussed in the previous video how this FM works above the John potential. So it's just an overview so we can talk about it in the next step, and there's no problem understanding them, no trouble. The last media talked about the relationship between distance and force. So we are also talking about our distance, when the distance between two items, the distance between A and A. When these distances start to get shorter, there will be a period of time when its distance is yours. Run at Youngston level. What do you mean by Youngston level when they have 10 to 10 power? In real life, your scope is your scope. In the middle of 100, the force matrix in non-action mode is your force matrix to the 10th to 12th power nanonewton. When we talk about action mode, in action mode, it goes beyond the scope of force. You're 20. Micro tiny. If you only need 10 power minutes, you won't do this. 12, because of you. Hey, so we talked about this, and they said where sports are going on, they're talking about the non-political model. Where the fourth bounce, we're talking about the non-political model, and in between we're talking about the non-political model. Many companies describe it as an intermediate model. Intermediate mode is intermediate mode. In real life, create AFM manufacturing. To see this picture, if you want to see this picture, your performance in real life is much simpler. What would we do? Silicon. Let's take it as a standard. You can get any silicon sample, simply grade it, and you will scale it. Under one condition, you can do this, you can do this, you can get these prides, we can verify it. Since we have done this, we can see it. The last video, like Oxford, Parks, Systems, he becomes a broker, Nano becomes Circ, Nano becomes magnetic. So, this is an overview of what we talked about in the last video. What we're going to talk about today is this your theoretical background? What is the physics behind this? But how do you apply it to real life? When I talk about your 20 micronewton, how will it imply your piconewton? So, in order to do this, the first thing we have to do is set up an FM, and it is the equipment manufacturer that wins the most. Chloe followed. All of all. So what happens to it? In these manufacturing enterprises, the headmaster never changes. What has changed? Then his software operation will change. If it changes the way work works, then it will change the way buildings work. So what's the point of his being here? What hardware is needed to build it? First of all, what we need is whether it can say Candy River and the laser we need. Let's call this a laser. It also talks in here, what about lasers? What will happen to her? But this is your candy liver. What happens to the second one? Who does the sample talk to? At the bottom of the sample, you mean X and S scanners. The scanner speaks, and what happens here is that when the laser comes out of here, we don't hit the confu directly on the lever. If we only hit the lever, we wouldn't have a TV choice. Whenever your candy lever or laser doesn't match, this will be the least likely. So what we're going to do is your milliuse is 1 here, not 1. S and miro riflazione, miro ala. Well, this is your direction, starting from here. So it will cause reflection starting from here. This second direction happens, and then the basic attribute of light, when it hits here, it will start in front of 19, which is still Albert 19. When it hits here, it will see your reflection here. This is a reflex. I reflect it here. It doesn't pass through the laser. Mirror 2, mirror 2. So the first one happens, the second one happens, the third one happens. What happens here when it hits here? Many companies say the detector PSP principal device, and many people say you're for the coordinate tetra detector. What do you mean you're the director of the PSP now? This means positioning sensor photos. Scope Voltaire positioning sensor for positioning sensor. The picture is as clear as diamond. Refers to photos. I mean optical and positioning sensors. What do you mean? It has 4 words. Positioning, the second is sensor, and the third is photodiode. So I'm going to classic it, and if I'm going to break it, it's easier to understand. This means a position. The second meaning is your sensor. The third meaning is photos. The fourth meaning is picky diet. So I know very well that when we look at position sensors, any position dependent photo is a combination of 4 things. It refers to from optics to optics, from optics to optics, from sensitive materials to optical sensitive devices. What do we mean by optics? The point is light. Wherever we talk about optics, where we talk about photographs, we are talking about light. This means that light depends on certain properties. What is the way you work? You will put light on it. So what are these outputs that you will give in the form of electric current? So how much output will you give about matter? Once again, that will depend on. What does it mean to read the light intensity above your light intensity? And what does it mean to say sensor? Where are sensors used in real life? For your sensor, one of the best examples we use in an elevator is 11. 11 is there. And when we press the elevator comes. In real life, sensor means there is no mechanical signal and no electrical signal. Sensor means like your non-electrons to non-electrons. This is a non-electrical object and non-electrical signal converter. Electronic signal, electronic signal. This is what we call a sensor. And another thing you miss is what is the difference between censorship and transformation. Before installing, I will make another video and then talk about what the sensor is with a good detail. What is the relationship between the two? What are the basic differences? So, will you talk to him? Sensor means that when we get the output in the electrical signal, the non-electrical signal still exists. And so, in the non-electrical signal, you become an optical signal. What does it mean to say location? Its location is relevant, so that's why I call it the fortune quintile, I call it the Rex visit, I call it the wire axis, and suppose our laser detects it here in the center, so it gives you all the signals of 3 numbers, one saying yours. We call it vertical. Signal. The other is that you tell him to send us a cross signal. The third thing that happens is intensity. Intensity, but what will happen now? When it produces a signal, what signal unit is it? There are many kinds of signals, like we produce in the form of voltage, in the form of current, in whose form the signal is produced, or in the form of voltage. Okay, alright. The voltage it maintains depends on the manufacturer you want. So each company has different rules, but we compare it to the strength of a pearl. If the strength value here changes, your value is the smallest. The value intensity of every company is yours. 2 volts, 2 plus 3.2 volts, submostry. When you align for the first time, you will do one thing. What do you mean by aligning? When they are aligned, first of all, they will see what the intensity voltage is. Now, let's do a little bit here. First of all, we use the laser. What is a laser? The laser is hit on the mirror. When you hit the mirror, your candy will reflect from here to the liver. The canteen reflects from the liver to another mirror and then passes through the PSPD from the other mirror. So there are a lot of situations here. Our first situation is, what is our laser? The laser we use is yours. We use watts. The laser we use is yours. We use your laser. We try to see why we put the microscope on it. Instead of on the whole microscope, we put the microscope here. So what does a microscope do? It can observe all usability, so we can aim with a laser. If this company has 8 wavelengths of 820 nanometers to use signals, we can't see the ice, so we must install a laser catheter. In the field, the first question is, why do we use 2 mirrors? First, ask us why. Why are we using 2M? What would you do if you hit it straight? Bodil said that there is no direct laser market because what is reason? Directly, if you hit it, you have no option to adjust. So what is the problem? If the liver changes and your hand changes its angle, we will never be able to align it. What is the second question? When we use mirrors here, when we are reflected, why do we use mirror 2? Because with the help of mirror 2, we have to perform.